It's actually real rare that I get to do a review of a video game because I typically just play video games for fun and don't really, put them on the YouTube channel. And I wrote about a 3,000 word script going over just why this game's so great and why I wanted to, break the rules and make a video about it. And then I realized the chances that I get around to, reading the script and then editing all the footage and everything together, I probably wouldn't record the video, and that would be a shame because I thoroughly want to recommend this game to pretty much everybody because it's just such a great game, which I didn't really think I'd be saying going into it. So over the Christmas period, I decided, I want to try and find a co-op game to play with a couple of my friends, my brother, and we stumbled upon a few. We were playing the hits at the time, Phasmophobia and Lethal Company, stuff like that, which were all real fun. And then I said, let's try Remnant 2. It's free on Game Pass. It's only been on there for a couple months. They've just released a new big DLC. Let's give that a go. And man, I wasn't expecting to still be playing it a few weeks later with over 100 hours in the game and being just thoroughly impressed with pretty much everything that I experienced. So first off, what is Remnant 2? Well, if you like Souls games, if you like shooter games, then you're probably going to like it because it kind of plays like a shooting Souls game, only with a whole bunch of flair and twists within there. So basically, you're rolling around, you're dodging attacks, you're killing bosses, you're attacking enemies. It has one of the most satisfying, fun shooting systems in a game that I've played in a real long time. The hitboxes in the game are absolutely immaculate. It's just a joy to play from start to end. And speaking of start to end, this game doesn't really have a very clear end until, 100 plus hours in, because there's just so much stuff to do. In fact, the biggest problem with the game, in my opinion, is as soon as you go into the game, you don't really know how much there is, and you might quit quite early on just not knowing what there is within there waiting for you. When I first started playing the game, I was like, oh, this is cool, and it was one of those where it crept on me, where hour after hour, I was saying to myself, oh, that's really awesome, that's fantastic, that's great, until the point where I was like, okay, this is a game I'm going to be playing a whole bunch, and also a developer I'm going to be watching for a real long time to see if they continue doing this, because it's just that good of a game. Now, the beginning is kind of a little bit off-putting just because the intro to the game is slow, it's unnecessary in my opinion. It introduces you to the story, which wasn't a big selling point for me on the game. The game world is really cool, and the setting, but the story just didn't really do anything for me. I felt like it wasn't really necessary, but I guess I know why they included it. And then unfortunately, you have to play probably about 30 minutes until you can actually start doing co-op, which is a big selling point of the game. And that's when I ran into my first problem, which is, unfortunately, at least on Game Pass, and I know if you Google this, people on Steam have this issue too, the game has some unfortunate optimization issues in terms of the game crashes quite a bit. I think it's improved recently in the last month or so since they released another patch, but the game was crashing for us fairly frequently to the point where my brother, who was going to play in the 3-man co-op with us because it is 1 to 3 players, decided he wasn't going to play because it was just crashing so often, which is a shame. But as soon as you actually get into the game and get playing, what it is a class-based shooter where basically you choose your difficulty of the game world and it generates a seed which has essentially a whole bunch of maps that are stitched together, going zone by zone with a loading screen in between. There's multiple worlds, which are all varied. The enemy diversity is fantastic, to be honest. There's multiple bosses, sub-bosses per map, and there's events. And then the biggest selling point of the game is that obviously you build your character in the way you would in ARPG. You're getting things that do plus poison damage, plus bleed damage, and there's hundreds of these, and it's in the way of rings, amulets, and then overall you have your armor. Then you can put mutations on your weapons and things like that, and you can upgrade it all as you go along. The way that you find these things is why I say when you first start the game, you might be a little bit, off-put by how little stuff you're actually gaining. And that's because this game has one of the best secret systems in a modern game that I've played. It really is amazing. You can go through and play this game, and I've completed the campaign, I think, 9 times at this stage, all the way through on the highest difficulty. Every time you run it, it will be slightly different because of the way that they seed the map and how they stitch the maps together. But not only that, there's going to be stuff you miss every single time, unless you're looking up a guide for every map that you walk into. And even if you're doing a guide for every map you walk into, there's going to be stuff that you can only get when you have a certain seed of the world stitched in the right way together, which might sound annoying, But because the minute-to-minute gameplay and the variety of the builds and the classes and things like that, it's not, because every time you're going in, you're testing a new build, you're doing things more efficiently, and the actual minute-to-minute gameplay is so fun that you don't care. You're actually having a good time just running the world again. Obviously, I don't want to get too spoilery with how you find some things, but there's stuff like you get a necklace from doing like a combination of quests together in a very specific way that would be maybe counterintuitive to how you'd normally do it. And then if you walk past a statue wearing this necklace, the statue will open a hole in the ground and there'll be a special item within there. And there's literally hundreds of these secrets throughout the game. It can be as easy as going off the beaten path and finding a chest that you otherwise wouldn't have seen. Or it can be as specific as farming a map for a real long time, repeatedly running it over and over again to get coins, to then bribe a boss who will then give you items. And then in that same save, maybe you can go and kill another boss and then come back to it later, and that boss that you bribed would be there and he'd reward you for basically helping him ascend to the throne. Is that too spoilery? Maybe, who knows? But it's hard to describe just how good and how in-depth the system is and how fun it is to discover things or even look them up and be like, wow, that's cool design. So the game obviously has difficulty levels, so you can choose whether you want to play it on real easy or, real hard. And I figured this would just bullet sponge the enemies, right? And the bosses in the game are really well designed and there's some really difficult encounters in there. And I thought, more difficulty is just going to make things hit harder and it's going to take longer to kill things. But there's actually new abilities and changed abilities on the bosses as you go through the game and rank up that difficulty, which was a really interesting thing that I've not seen one of these games do before. And it's just really satisfying how you can play through the game and feel like, oh, I don't know anything, and this boss is kicking my ass. And then later on, you're doing it again, and you're like, oh, I've done this, I'm going to be good at it. And then it does new stuff, and you're like, oh, fuck. And then eventually, when you fulfill that, you'll come back to the boss later on that same difficulty, and you'll feel that meaningful progression of not only your gear and your understanding of your character, but also the understanding of the boss. I honestly have almost nothing bad to say about this game, which is really rare. The only two negatives I have is that there seemed to be a memory leak and there was a bunch of crashing, especially in multiplayer. And on the Xbox app, which obviously you use in the Game Pass, so maybe on Steam this isn't a problem, inviting people on Xbox app just sucks. Fuck knows how that company is so rich and has one of the worst multiplayer systems for inviting people into games and having it just work. But there we go. On Game Pass, you can only play the base game and you have to buy the DLC additionally, which I think is completely fair and fine because honestly, after playing this game for a few hours, you probably will eventually want to buy the DLC if you vibe with it at all, because legit, I couldn't put this game down and it's just a fantastic experience from beginning to end. I think the developer's planning a couple more DLCs, and I sincerely hope that if they make Remnant 3, which I really hope that they do, that the game is just this, but expanded, because honestly, they've got a formula here that you can tell the devs really love this game, and if they continue to build upon that, this is clearly going to be one of my favorite franchises ever in gaming, because it is honestly just that fun of an experience. I typically don't replay games. I'm not that kind of person. Once I've finished a game, I'm putting the game down and I'm moving on to something else. Remnant, I had to legit stop myself from playing the game because I'd unlocked basically everything. I was chasing like a couple last secret items, and then Season of Discovery's just come out on WoW, and I have an obligation to play with my friends in Raid and things like that. So I'm like, I have to level. I have to stop playing Remnant 2. But it's one I'll definitely be coming back to as soon as they release that next DLC or another version of the game, Remnant 3 or whatever. Yeah, definitely be right back there. So yeah, I think that'll do it. There's only so much I can wax lyrical about it because people typically don't like watching reviews where you're really positive about a game you really enjoyed that's fantastically good, because they'll say, oh, you were paid for that video and you're shilling or whatever. But honestly, just give it a go. It's free if you have Game Pass. Obviously, Game Pass is like a $10 or whatever month subscription. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most fun games on there, and probably, I'd say, one of the most fun games I've played in recent years. Honestly, it's just a treat to play. From the very bare bone mechanics of what you see, what you feel when you're playing, it's just a treat. And when you get more into the game, it's one of those where there's just every layer you peel of this onion, there's just more and more depth, more flavor. And it's just overall great. Hopefully they fix the optimization and the crashing issues, and hopefully they release more content so I can buy it and support this developer, because goddamn, is it a good game. So thanks for watching. One of the rare Kira positive videos. All my magic cards are falling over. go to the link in the video description, buy GamerSups. They support me. Obviously, you guys all support me as well, but if you want to buy GamerSup, you can do so with my affiliate code. It gives me a kickback. You get money off, so win-win for everybody. And there's loads of people in my community that have been buying it, and they're all very, very pleased. It's basically a powder. You put it in water, you drink it. You can have caffeinated, uncaffeinated. If you're like me, who drinks a whole bunch of water and likes a bit of variety sometimes, you know, keto-friendly, no sugars, then you'll probably enjoy some of these flavors because they are just nice. On top of that, you can also buy snacks and stuff on there. Waifu cups, which are just shakers with, you know, big titted anime girls on, which is, you know, a star. Or if we're going by the Ubisoft method, it's a quadruple A standard shaker cup. But there we go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.